Cynthia Hoyle,
I'm here.
Annie Adams,
I'm here.
Kara Dudek,
Here.
Audrey Ishii, Susan Jones,
Here.
Jeff Marino,
Here.
Craig Schonkweiler,
Here.
Lily Wilcock.
Here.
And that does.
I second that for sure.
Everyone in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right. Approval of minutes from previous meetings. So we have the June 21st, 2016 minutes. Does anyone have any corrections, changes to the minutes before we move for approval? Do we have a motion to approve as submitted?
I'll make that motion.
Second?
I'll second it.
All in favor?
Aye.
Those are approved. Since no one, I think everyone voted aye. On July 19th, I have some changes, starting on page 4. And some are minor, so I will just give those to you. But in the first paragraph, where it says, through a partnership with the Champaign-Urbana Mass Transit District, right after that, we should say, and Safe Kids. There were two organizations that were partnering to do the 2003 event. And I think it gets very confusing when we talk about Safe Kids and Safe Routes to School, so I think that probably got blended together. And at the bottom of the page, the last sentence, it says she explained that the students walked by the reader to register their bike tag. They're actually registering their trip with their tag. So we can just take bike tag out and put trip. That would be the easiest thing to do. Then on the next page, the second paragraph, where it says partnered with Urbana School District and hired a coordinator, between the words to and volunteer, we should add in hired a coordinator to run the walking school bus program. I'm having trouble reading my own handwriting, so you may have to ask me what it says. The walking school bus program, in which volunteers walk specific routes. So, then, in the second paragraph, after the Active for Me program, we'll take out solar readers. I think whatever I said there, they don't get solar readers. And a bike to school day bicycle safety program have been offered, but not through the park district. I may have said this summer we did one through the park district, but it got confused. In the last sentence of the fourth paragraph, we'll take out the city and put Champaign County bikes. Also use donated money and along with Safe Routes to School grant funds to buy bicycles for
Hey,
safety
Sophia.
classes. Oh, sorry. Forgot about my bike. And those are all the substantive. Yeah, the rest of them are small changes. So I will give that to you. I can give that to you now. Does anybody else have any corrections, changes, etc.? We have a motion to approve.
I move to approve.
I second that.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. Then our next agenda item is public input. Do we have any public input? Nope. Okay. Do we have, next agenda item is unfinished business. Do we have any unfinished business? Oh, Craig's going toward the microphone. You're going for new business. All right. So we're ready to go to new business? Okay. And the first item is Bradley Avenue bike lanes, the final discussion.
Can you hear me? Yeah. And it's also the Craig Show, right? So,
Yes.
the Craig Show.
Yes.
So back in October, I looked it back up. I couldn't believe it. Back in October, I came to you folks, and we talked about buffered bike lanes and got some guidance on widths of bike lanes and things like that in the buffer. And back then, we talked about that Bradley Avenue looks like this, where we have two wide 20-foot lanes in Urbana. There's no markings really, except for the center line markings. In Champaign, there are 4 lanes over in Champaign. So we talked about an 11-foot vehicle lane, a 5-foot buffer, and a 4-foot bicycle lane. That's basically what we talked about. There's also a 2-foot gutter pan out there. So since that time, we've done some design. And actually, we're going now with a 10-foot vehicle lane, which matches the vehicle lanes to the east as you approach Lincoln, and also to the west in Champaign. Also, back in November, we did a speed study of traffic so that we could gather pre-bike lane installation speeds, and then after bike lane installation speeds. We had some really high vehicle speeds on this section. When you enter from Champaign, it just opens up to a wide 20-foot lane. Through this section 2, we have some sideswipe accidents that have happened, where people are driving and they've been passed on the right. And we think that the design that we have here will help reduce those sideswipe accidents as well. There have been studies that say that when you narrow a road, you can get 1 to 2 miles per hour less. I expect actually probably something more than that, because we're going from 20 to, in essence, 10. So we should get something quite a bit less there. Bradley, the speed limit is 30 mile an hour. 85th percentile was actually 40 mile an hour. Max speeds, just to give you an idea, and this was actually in April of this year. Let me see here. The eastbound speeds, max speed, there was actually a 65 mile an hour measured. Like I said, the 85th percentile was 40. About exceeding the 30 mile an hour, there was about 92% exceeding. And westbound, it was about max speed about 62 mile an hour. 85th percentile is about 41 mile an hour. 85th percentile, that's this percentile that traffic engineers look at, where basically 85% of the population would use, and it's a free flow speed. That is actually the speed we would use to typically set speed limits, like say in open rural conditions. We found it doesn't quite work as well sometimes in urban environments with that. And just to preface that, we're not here to adjust the speed limit. We'll keep it at 30 with that. The average daily traffic in 2012 was about 6,500 vehicles. When I measured it in the spring, it's closer to 8,300 vehicles or so. But that should easily be able to accommodate 2 lanes of traffic through there. So
Is that 8,300 total, both directions?
that would be, yeah. So about
Just curious.
About
Okay.
4,000 each direction
Okay.
or so. Yeah. Let me pull up. This is the draft bicycle report that we had, and really on this section, nothing has really changed. Let me zoom in here. So what we see is this blue dash. It'd be the bike lanes. And then to the east there, eventually there would be, I think it's a side path. Let me go down, look real quick at that. So it'd be actually bike lanes to the east of Lincoln proposed, but that section's more of oil and ship type street. In the short term, the red dot would be a bike route. I think with this project, we'll be installing signage along Bradley. The commission had talked about some connectivity here to the other system, which would be, say, down at Fairview. So we would go ahead and put in a bike route signs here and then down Kohler. That way we connect to the existing system and have some connectivity. We also will be connecting to the Goodwin Avenue multi-use path with this project. So I just wanted to show you folks that that's what the 2008 and the proposed 2016 bike plan showed. So in our observations, and when we go and design, we always try to take a moment to observe. My wife says that sometimes I'm kind of geeky and I drive down a lot of streets over and over again, but one of the things that was noticed here is that at the Mount Olive Baptist Church, which is actually in Champaign, when they have Sunday worship services, they are packed at their parking lot. They do not have any plans to expand, and they also park out onto Bradley. They do that as well Wednesday nights. And I talked to the pastor there, and they also do it 1 or 2 nights a month. Other than that, there's no parking. So most of the time when you go by there, there's no parking. Well, that posed a challenge to the design here. If we go with dedicated bike lanes in front of the church, we would prefer then that motorists do not park in those dedicated bike lanes. We felt, though, that we're going from a 4-lane section in Champaign where there is no bike facilities to dedicated bike lanes we feel east of Goodwin. The middle piece here, so that's what we need to talk about tonight, is proposed to be shared bike / parking lane. And we can talk about that design. So I would consider that to be like a transition zone. It's viewed by staff to be a win-win situation. I've met with the church, talked with them. When I observed parking there it was actually Sunday night from Romine, which we can show you those limits, down to Goodwin, it was packed on both sides of the street. And as you know, in the past, we've dealt with some bike parking removal, and things like that can be very controversial for the community. It can sometimes breed ill will towards bicyclists as well. We feel that this is a win-win situation. I'll show you the design, but that also we can monitor it through time. And if there is a demand there, if say, we're 5-10 years down the road, we can broach that subject at that time to moving to a dedicated bicycle system or bike lanes at that location. So I just want to, before I show you the design, we'll talk to you about that. I have reached out to the church. I met with the pastor. I am going to talk to the deacon board. We want to do that, be good neighbors. And then we also have reached out to the city of Champaign staff. They have, their public works and planning staff have met and talked about this. So we wanted to give them a heads up because some of this actually falls in Champaign. And I'll show you that here in a minute. And get their thoughts as well. And right now they don't have any really concerns with the design as proposed.
But the church is in Urbana,
The church is in Champaign, and I'll show you that here in a minute.
so we're providing parking for Champaign.
Champaign,
Okay.
yeah. And then, but it'll be on the south side. I'll show you in a minute. On the south side, it's actually in Urbana. So there's a funky jurisdictional thing going on there that we can
Okay.
talk about that's a little bit different. We have a couple of those locations throughout the town. It's not, it's not, basically half the road is Champaign, half the road's Urbana in a certain area. So
Okay.
let's just walk through the design here. So this is I'll zoom in, but this is the overall area. So, to the west here where this hand is, that's basically near Carver Drive. So that's the western city limits. of Urbana, and then over here is Lincoln, and in the middle is Goodwin, okay? So let's just zoom in and let's walk it west to east, and then we'll walk it east to west as if we're a bicyclist. So we'll just zoom in pretty good here. Can we all see that? So what we have here, this is Crispus Drive in Champaign. This orange line that comes up here is the east-west dividing line. This is Champaign over here. This is Urbana over here. It actually runs down the middle of the road. So this half is Champaign, this half is Urbana.
Okay.
Okay. So as we go down the road, we've got 4 lanes of traffic, 2 lanes eastbound. And then what you're seeing is we will put in these arrows to transition the lanes from basically 2 to 1. We'll go over Carver, which is in Urbana, as we go down through. Right now, the transitions kind of goes across. Well, it does go across Romine. I've actually shifted that to the east. We've had a few accidents at this location. There's a bus stop here. This will allow the bus to be able to stop. Other traffic will be over in the inside lane. And we feel that that makes a safer movement here at Romine. So as you move to the east here, this is the existing striping here. Then we'll see this white here. This is the proposed transition over Matthews to here. And now we get to what we would have a blocked off area. And the reason for that blocked off area is it's actually within the sight triangle of a corner. We don't want anybody parking within that corner area because you can't see when you're exiting Matthews. So this would be the Mount Olive Baptist Church over here on the north. So this is in Champaign. This line here is the east-west demarcation line on the north side. So this is Champaign over here. This is Urbana. This is Urbana down here.
Okay.
So last year when we patched the road, we patched all of Urbana's portion. And we spent about $500,000 getting that road up to speed. That's part of our internal policies to make sure that when we stripe bike lanes or do any bicycle improvements, we've improved the condition of the road. We feel that that's very important for the success of the system. Champaign did not have the funding. This section has not been patched over here. On the south here, I want to point this out. Across the street, there's the future site of Leak & Sons Funeral Home. They've actually broke ground this week. What you see here is an entrance, and then there will be a full site development here for a funeral home.
So, Craig, you will have then the site triangle setbacks from the driveways as well marked for parking?
With the site triangle, that doesn't work with the driveways. The driveways actually, by ordinance, it's 5 feet either side of the edge of the driveway that they can't park.
Okay.
By ordinance. So if
Okay.
Leak & Sons parks here, builds this entrance, and a car would park in the front, by ordinance, they're in violation.
Okay.
Okay? But we look at site triangles more for the city streets. Okay? So here would be the shared bike parking lane. So like in the event you see here now, there's no cars, and a bicyclist could come along the road and use that space. The vehicle lane would be on the inside part. Okay? As we move to the east, and we come up to Goodwin, again, we have the block out for the site triangle. And then we move from there to the bike lanes. So if there was cars here parked, a bicyclist would need to be in the vehicle lane, and then they could move over into this space, this gored out space, and then go over into the bike lane. So this is the buffered bike lanes. So we have 10-foot vehicle lane, a 6-foot buffer, a 4-foot bike lane, plus a 2-foot gutter. So that's technically 6, and the buffer actually counts towards the bike lane as well. Cynthia, you had something?
Yeah, I was wondering, because I know, for example, on Race, we do continue, the bike lane a little way past the intersection, even though it merges, and I'm wondering if we should try to have a short section of the bike lane here to line them up to cross there, because I'm a little concerned about bicyclists positioning themselves at that intersection with area striped off,
Mm-hmm.
that we may get erratic behavior because there will be cyclists who think that they cannot bicycle in that area.
Mm-hmm.
And then motorists won't know what they're necessarily going to do when they're crossing the intersection. So if there's another solution to helping line them up properly, I'm open to that, but I was wondering if we should consider that.
We could. What we found when we stripe across intersections, that the striping usually lasts 6 months and then it goes away.
Well, I was just suggesting that the bike lanes start on the west side
on the
of
west
Goodwin.
side.
Just so that they're lined up. Not that you have to, yeah, I know what you're saying. When we put it in the intersection, the striping doesn't hold
So
up.
you're saying, say, bring it down and then you bring the bike lane
Yes.
in to that area and then take it across. I could look into that.
See, yeah, tell us whether you think that will
Yeah.
work so that we have them positioned properly.
Yeah. I could
Also,
look at that.
too, is there any way, this might be a solution or it might be helpful or it might not, but is there a Sharrows marking in the marked off area, like a bicycle and arrows? Would that
You mean
be?
back in this zone?
Yeah, west.
Or in this zone where this shared bike lane area?
Either one might be confusing to a cyclist to know that they can bike in that area.
Right. We currently have shared bike parking on Pennsylvania and Anderson. We do not have Sharrows in there. We don't recommend Sharrows. We actually
Right.
recommend Sharrows in only certain situations. You'll see some down there at the intersection.
Yeah.
I think if I look at it I think what I would expect bicyclists to do is that they will likely install bikes may use full lane in this section. Okay. So
Yeah.
you would
Yeah.
view that side as a bonus area.
Yes.
Meaning that a bicyclist would be in the road, but
Yes.
then they could move over into that space if they felt comfortable.
Mm-hmm.
But
Right.
if we do something in that space and then you have parked cars, that can get really
Very confusing.
Yeah. Totally makes sense.
Yeah, people will complain and be like, "There's supposedly
Yeah.
this is a bike lane and now there's someone parked in it." And but I like I think that's actually a really good solution because honestly, as a cyclist, I wouldn't know what to do. But if you say may use full road, I will use the road if I need to. I will feel like I can be here. Yeah, I'm allowed. And I just, overall, I'm really excited about this. This is my route back from Home Depot when I drive, and it's awful. I mean, the cars are awful, and there are pedestrians and cyclists trying to use this space. So from a driving perspective, a cycling perspective, and a pedestrian perspective, I think this is going to really make this space a lot better for everyone to be in. So
Okay.
just wanted to add that in.
Jeff?
Craig, I think this is a great idea. One question, did you look at doing 2 10-foot driving lanes and then 2 5-foot bike lanes and then 1 parking lane? Like 1 row of parking on the north side of the street for the church, and then you'd alleviate all of the potential confusion with the shared bike car lanes.
But we talked about that, but we feel that we like to have consistency on one side of the road and the other. And then when you have, are you talking about bike lanes adjacent to parking then?
Yeah, on the north side, potentially, yeah.
That, to be honest with you, that's been always controversial in, it seems like in Urbana, having the bike lane adjacent to the parked cars. If we do, we've actually moved to where we'd like the bike lane to be wider than
Or
just
buffered?
be buffered, yeah.
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 So we did think of those things, but we felt that this is probably the easiest or cleanest transition piece here. When I design, I tell my guys we want to make things as clean and simple as possible. That's basically what we came up with here. I think Cynthia's point about that transition piece, we could certainly do that, kind of swing that down and bring it in, and then it lines up here and then carries you across. I think that's a good point. Let me walk to the east a little bit.
Okay.
Go ahead.
I just want to, I live on Anderson, and I think it's not anything like busy as Bradley, but, having it clearly marked that you can use the full lane, and most people are still going to be off to the side. They're not going to want to, especially on Bradley. And I think it's a good way of having a change that's a transition, and yeah, we're putting bike facilities here, but not annoying a whole mess of churchgoers, and, you know,
It works well on Anderson. That's my route all the time. That's how I came here tonight. And not only do bicyclists use that space, pedestrians often
Yes.
use that space, because the sidewalks on the east side of Anderson, farther south, have a really sharp slope toward the roadway, and so people in wheelchairs tend to use that space. And so clearly it feels comfortable enough that people will use it for that, and drivers I've never had a driver. The only place I've had a driver hassle me recently is I had a driver harass me at the intersection, with Florida, and I offered to call an officer to explain to him I had a right to be bicycling there, and he didn't want to do that. But I don't think it was because of the shared parking. I think it was hot and he was grouchy.
Where it doesn't work well is if you have a high demand of parking.
Exactly.
But, you know, we view it with the church, you're talking, you know, just specific times and, right. So I think that.
I think it's a good solution.
And I really like the idea of the transition, because the car drivers will be aware that there's a change is happening, especially when you're coming from Champaign down that road in your car. You're like, vroom, 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 and people are, I mean, I'm a nut. I always go the speed limit 5 over, like all the time. And it drives people crazy on this road if you're going 30, 35. And so they go around you on the right. And so what I like about this is it's, especially when you have the transition as you're moving down the street here now, you have not only just a bike lane, you also have that buffer there.
Yeah.
So it's like a double negative. Don't be driving around Annie's slow moving car, driving the speed limit on the right, because that is so dangerous and dumb.
Right.
So I just really appreciate the thoughtfulness of that.
Right. The other thing you'll notice here is when we get into the buffered area, I want to get your thoughts on this, but I'm proposing green-backed bike lane markings. That would be our first installation in the city. That is,
I like that.
they're allowed with interim approval by the Manual of Uniform Traffic Control Devices. They do cost us a little bit more. I've got some quotes on that, but the thought is the white on white concrete isn't as visible as white with a green back on concrete. So that would pop or make it more visible, the bike lane. So what we're proposing is to try this at this location. We can see how they work. Now they do fade through time, so we have to keep those maintained. But I think it's worthwhile to continue to be progressive here in Urbana and you know, look for these new treatments. The MCOR project has, which I'll talk about a little bit, has some of these types of treatments suggested on it. But that's where it would start here as you move to the east, as you go along through here. So we'll keep going down to the east as we go through.
I really do like the green is really good, because car drivers will not see cyclists in the bike lane, and if it's only white paint, they're going to be like, it's white paint. Right. Like I can just drive in it. But the green I definitely think it stops people. It's a little bit like a red stop sign on the ground, or like when you're on the highway and they have that, you know, I-57 on the ground and you drive over it. It's interesting. It seems like such a small treatment, but I really can see it having a big impact of keeping cars out of those bike lanes.
Right. And I think it's not a huge volume of traffic, but 8,000 is not something that's small either. Plus the higher vehicle speeds we're seeing, that the increase in the buffer space from 5 to 6 and the reduce in the vehicle lane from 11 to 10. I think that will be a good thing overall. And I think it'll help with bicyclists feeling safer on this street than they would have otherwise. So as we move to the east, we come down the road here to Lincoln. So there is a transition piece here where we'll go from bike lane to basically Sharrows through the intersection. Let me back out just a little bit. So the reason that it's this far back is we do analysis to see how far the vehicles queue. So we don't want, the bike lane to run right in the back of vehicles that are backed up at the signals. So what you see here is it starts here. That's basically the link. I mean, there's a fair amount of traffic here at this intersection. But there would be a transition that would be this dotted line where we'd go from a bike lane and then they go over and we put sharrows in. This is sort of like with the NACDO design. And we have this other, also at Washington, we have some similar design here. And then basically it's announcing to the driver that there's something different here.
Yep.
It's not just ending the bike lane, it's actually bringing it in. I did look at whether or not we could do some transitional marking. Again, that can be somewhat problematic because vehicles are running on it so much that they wear it down so quick that you have this nice marking in the beginning and then it's gone. As an example, when we put paint on concrete, it can last anywhere from 3 to 6 months to a year. This will be actually modified urethane, which we get more like 2 to 3 years out of it. So that's the paint striping we'll do. We also looked at doing inlay, which means you grind and you recess the markings. However, though, once you do that, you're pretty much locked in. We would rather wait on that until we see how this all functions, because there may be tweaks that we have to make through time. But that is something that Public Works is looking at, is doing that. The Department of Transportation did that on Route 45 through Champaign and 150 through Champaign-Urbana this summer. So you probably don't notice it, but it recesses the markings down enough that the plows aren't continually wearing it off. So as you go through here, you'll notice that it's only on the what we call through right lane. Down through here. This demarcation line is where it changes from concrete to asphalt. We don't put the shared lanes on the left turn, and the reason is there's no bike facilities to the north. It's meant to carry you down to the bike route on this side. That's where the bike route would begin down this way, over here. Okay.
And where is our new multi-use path? Did it come this far?
Well, that's actually way over on Cunningham.
Oh, you're right. I get those mixed up in my brain. I don't know why I've always done that. Okay.
And then my other question would be where Cynthia was suggesting the transition at that one intersection, you had the striped crosswalk.
Yes.
I'm wondering, will you be doing any kind of pedestrian infrastructure in this square where I see little blue lines and stuff?
That's beyond the scope of this project. So it's a bike lane project. I will tell you though that we're going to be looking at the crossings at this apartment complex on the upper left. There'll be one north and one south. There is a heavy drop off and crossing there. So we have some funds reserved to look at that.
Oh, good.
Yeah, that's very exciting because in a lot of ways those are people who are maybe transitionally being in our city for only a couple years, and I want them to have positive experience of being here. Yeah, I always see them kind of perched as if they don't know where to go or how to be comfortable there. So that's kind of exciting that would happen.
Hey, Craig, can you go back and look at the transition from where it goes to 4 lanes down to 2 lanes?
Sure.
Were you any like signage or any type of?
I don't have the signage shown on here, but there will be transitional signage back here.
Yeah.
So what we would have is it's a right lane ends, kind of where this arrow is, and then you'd actually have another sign where this arrow is. It's a merge sign, and that would be in advance. This will actually be longer type of taper than what is out there now. We've had some problems where what happens is vehicles try to outrace each other and to try to merge. This would actually be a longer transition. It's actually longer across this section here than what was here across Romine, and then the advanced signage will actually start. It starts here now, but the transition ends here, if you get it. So it'll be actually a longer threshold to get it moved over through that zone.
And then you'd have the sign that says bikes may use full lane somewhere in that
It would
area.
it would start back, it would be like, say, in this area east of Matthews, when we get to the full single lane at that point. And I still have to work on all the details of the signage yet. Any other questions eastbound before I go westbound? So let's go back down, and we're going to head back to the west. When we design, we'll actually roll this out, and we'll walk it with our eye, because we always are looking to see if there's any visual, elements that are of concern. So here there's what we call a through left and a through right. Right now, this merge happens basically over this wide lane. There's no markings for it. We will take care of that. Now, I did do a capacity analysis. We need to keep those 2 lanes like that. But as we go across here, then vehicles will neck down to 1, and then the bike lane starts. So we'll just move to the west as we go. So now we have the buffer. It's important to note from Goodwin to Lincoln, that's about 1/4 mile. From Goodwin to the far west city limits of Urbana is another 1/4 mile. So as we go down here to Goodwin, even though this intersection, there's nothing to the north, we'll still treat it like an intersection because we don't know if there would be ever future, development that way. That now begs the question, if we do a transition piece like this over here, so we do some type of transition from the full lane into here, are we okay then with this coming out and then we go over this way? Or the only concern I have now is if we bring bicyclists in, into a transition in this zone, and we need to probably have some type of signage, and maybe back here even watch for bikes or something like that. Any comments on that?
I might be an idiot, but why is there only one zebra crossing on the right side?
That's the major crossing,
Okay.
and that's what's there right now. The ramps don't actually connect up, like they run this way at this location. At this way, they actually run and allow the north-south movement. This one doesn't allow the north-south movement. We would have to rebuild the ramps to do that. We actually feel it's better in these type of situations to have one crossing point instead of 2.
I think the majority of the people crossing are going to the apartment complex. Lots of
Yeah.
students go up Goodwin.
That's a good point. Well, what I see right now is the people come from the apartment complex, they'll ride down the not down the sidewalk, then they go over here.
Yep.
This is the multi-use path.
Yes.
Right here.
Mm-hmm.
And then they head down to the south.
One other thing I was going to say, I think we have to have the sign saying bike lane ends and
Right.
watch for cyclists anyway, because it does
Right.
end. But I feel like because the space here, that if you have a sign, bicyclists merge left or whatever, I forgot whatever's in the MUTCD for that, they've got space to make the merge. We might be able to stripe a little bit of it because there's not really any traffic coming out of there and not put it into the roadway. I don't know. You can take a look at that. But I don't feel like it's going to be quite as confusing as moving.
the other movement to the
Yeah,
eastbound.
because there's not traffic coming from the north. So the bicyclists are not having to contend with that movement, whereas on the south there's significant traffic coming on Goodwin compared to the other side streets along here that aren't signalized. The other thing I was going to say is I think the 10-foot lanes will work well here with the buffer on the left for the bike lanes, because larger vehicles then, if they do need to move over a little, can do so without infringing on the bike lane. And that we do have buses and trucks
Yes.
on this road, so I think that is helpful to have that space
Yes.
that gives a little bit of leeway for maneuvering.
Yeah. The bus route is actually Romine to the west.
Oh,
So it
okay,
actually
they only
doesn't go-
start on Romine.
Yeah, it goes
Okay.
up and down Romine and then goes into Champaign. It doesn't
Okay.
go down this way. But I thought about that too, and I think, and there are a small amount of
Some
trucks. I mean, there's a
trucks.
ready mix plant to the north of Lincoln that comes down this way and then
Yeah.
trucks go into Champaign. But you're correct, we thought about that too with the buffer. It can be, if they right on the right side, that's okay. There's some space there, for that. They're not right next to the bicyclist. So as we move to the west here, that's where we would start this shared bike parking across this section here, all the way through. Talking with the church, it's actually been a little bit confusing for them to know where to park.
I'll bet.
And they've had some incidents where they've had problems turning in and out of the church, and there's no more demarcation of lanes and things. The other thing, too, of note is it's possible that Leak and Sons and the church work out some type of reciprocal agreement to allow parking on one or the other. So there could be pedestrians walking across here. The shared bike parking kind of helps that space to be a space where they could walk, and then they only have to cross 2 lanes instead of a full 40-foot
Okay.
that's subject to vehicles through this
Okay.
zone. So as we move to the west, it's a lot longer distance because there's no side streets.
Yeah.
And we would allow it up to this point, and then we now would transition over to a full 4 lanes into the Champaign section
Okay.
and on down. So the plan here right now is to further my talks with the church. If the commission is okay with the plan, I got to find out the bike lane, the bike signage. And then I want to get final quotes, and then I want to do this work here in September or as late as early October and get that done this year. We do have the funding for it to get it done. I think it's important to get it done. It's kind of it's a major road. This is really unique for Urbana. You're taking a major road and we're turning it into some other shared space. Any comments from the commission then?
Does anybody have any other questions, comments?
Concerns or? Okay.
I'm excited. I'm anxiously looking forward to seeing it installed.
Okay. So I would ask, I think you're going to hear this from us a little bit more. We would ask at this time to have some type of formal approval
Okay.
from the commission.
Would someone like to make?
And I will abstain since I designed the road. Okay. In respect to Jeff's comments from the past, I don't want to influence the process.
I would approve, and I would just like to add on to that. I think it, when I drive down this street, it looks to me like a street that Urbana has abandoned. It looks, I can feel the difference when I'm moving from Champaign. And again, I would never try biking down this street right now. So I'm talking about in a car. So when I'm in my car driving down the street, it feels to me that Urbana has abandoned this street. It feels like there's no infrastructure. It feels desolate. And I'm like, I know there's people here. I see people. What I would just like to say is it classes up this street. It makes the street look occupied. It makes the street look like it's a place where people can be and people can move, which takes it from a dead zone to a living zone. So I definitely approve of this.
I move that the BPAC approve of the plan for Bradley Avenue.
We have a second.
I second that.
Lily seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Unanimous approval.
Very good.
Good job.
Thank you, ladies and gentlemen.
Thank you.
Up next, we have the Encore project update, and that'll be an interesting
Well,
update.
on July 29th, the project was bids were open. And we had 2 projects. One was in Urbana and one was in Champaign. We had two bidders in Urbana, 1 bidder in Champaign. They both were over significantly. They were high bids.
As in million.
Million, yeah.
Yeah.
It was way too high to be able to award it. So we actually met as a group today with all the agencies, and the plan right now is to do some minor modifications, change some of the compressed schedule timeframes, keep the core of the project intact, and rebid it in November. There were a lot of things going on in July that impacted the bidding environment. There were contractors that did not bid because There were some major projects that were out to bid too at the same time, or they had already secured their work. So we're looking now at a 2017 and 2018 construction season, so that would be 2 full seasons instead of, say, a season and a half. So the plan is to bid it out on November 4th. Our consultant will be doing, the minor modifications, mainly to deal with how certain parts of it are built, as far as when. That's pretty much the status at this point. So we still believe in the project. We just took a blow, and we got to regroup. And
Yeah,
Put it back
I
out.
would add a little more information. I spoke with Jane Sullivan at MTD. And so we had a incredibly compressed time frame for this project. And when they asked the bidders why the price was so high, it was because they were going to have to do it in such a short time frame. So you're looking at overtime, and you're looking at having to have more people. So it really pushed the costs up. And then I was asking further about why we were waiting till November, and it's because engineers know this. These projects have to go out with IDOT bids on a schedule that they set.
Right.
So the next time we can do it is November. The benefit of this actually is that it means that we won't have to tear the roads up this fall during the semester. It gives us a little breathing room. It's disappointing we aren't going to get to start, but if we can get it done with a little more breathing room and a lower price, it's certainly worth doing.
Do we lose any grant money? Do we lose? Okay.
No, we apparently were able to obtain permission. The reason why we were on such a tight time frame is because the federal requirements required it to be done in such a short time period, which was not entirely realistic. But that was what we were working with. So I'm assuming they had to go through seek some sort of approval for extending the timeline.
Yeah, but we're not losing the funding.
No. And one other thing I would just like to add, I asked for a little more information about what's going to happen at the intersection of Green and Wright. And they told me that there will be, for bicyclists, a bicyclist lead time with a signal to facilitate their getting across. And I think that's a really important piece for that, because right now the cyclists don't actually know when they're supposed to go. And I know in Chicago, when they installed the bike signals at the intersection, the compliance by bicyclists with the signals went up to something like 90%, as opposed to it having been much lower previously. So I'm really looking forward to seeing some of those changes in place. It will improve safety a lot. The signal timing at that signal is a really challenging one. Yeah, it's very difficult. So I know that we'll probably be tweaking that a little bit, but I hadn't really seen the final plans for. It was on such a fast track, and we had to get it done so fast that it didn't come back with all the final details before it went into for the federal approval. Okay, great. Thanks for filling us in on that. And up next, we have a proposed pedestrian plan. This was something I asked about because we had talked about it, and you had indicated at one point we thought we might have funding to do one, and so I wondered, do we have that, and are we still talking about it?
So last year, the Champaign County Regional Plan Commission, they received a sidewalk network inventory grant that they went and assessed the sidewalks in both Champaign and Urbana.
And digitized.
And they digitized
all
it.
of them.
Yeah. Our staff member, Brad Bennett, came with, I think, Matthew Yoder from RPC and gave a presentation. At that time, there was some talk about, hey, maybe it's time to do a PED master plan. We've taken the bicycle system to gold level with the current plan. Maybe, we need to look at the PED master plan. So we approached council about that when we went through our capital improvement plan process, and we did reserve some funds. So there is money budgeted for that, that planning. We have entered into agreement with Regional Plan Commission, so it'd be the same people that did the bike plan would do this pedestrian master plan. I just want to read a couple sentences here. The pedestrian master plan will define the steps needed to make the city of Urbana a more walkable, livable, and healthy city. A walkable community would promote healthy living benefits, contribute to a cleaner environment, and support positive forces that through social cohesion in the city of Urbana. The plan will establish the policies, programs, projects, etc., that will further enhance pedestrian safety, comfort, and accessibility in all Urbana's neighborhoods. So we're in its infancy. We haven't actually started the process other than getting a scope of work defined. I want to talk a little bit about that. There'll be some pre-planning work, and Brad will likely come here in the fall, maybe next meeting, but soon to start the process. But there'll be some, we'll basically establish a steering committee like we did with the bike system. We'll have a kickoff meeting for the steering committee. We'll do some, formalize the public engagement process. We'll have a website that gets created with city staff input. Then we'll go into data collection and existing condition report public input. So there'll be some data collection. I'm just going to read the highlights of, well, they'll look at existing plans and policy reviews, do some community meetings, walking preference surveys, draft existing conditions report. Then again, the steering committee would be involved. They'll develop a plan for the future with goals and objectives, capacity needs, desires, recommendations. They'll develop pedestrian strategies, develop recommendations, hold some public workshops, and then develop an implementation plan. We have that with the bicycle system. So there would be an implementation plan with steering committee input. Usually our steering committees are made up of some city staff, some U of I people, some like say other key stakeholders. So we have yet to define that, but that's who that would be. And then we'd seek plan approval. We'd actually go to city council, actually come to this commission, and then go to city council, go through all of that to get a plan adopted. Timeline, we're talking probably a year or two total to do all this process. The funding is secured for this. We think it's important. And if we have a pedestrian master plan, much like we have a bicycle master plan, that can also help us secure additional funding. Grants become available. We have Safe Routes to School grants. We can cite the master plan as, hey, this has been vetted out through a public process. This is an important thing to do.
Has the scope been finalized?
If you want to have some input, you can send it to us. That's fine.
Well, I just
So-
have one thing I would like to have included. I would like for one of our goals in this to become designated as a walk-friendly community. There's an organization, it's walkfriendly.org, that certifies communities the same way the League of American Bicyclists does.
Okay.
And so that was, I don't remember how long ago I started banging that drum, but that was where it came from. And we can deal with some of the other things probably in the goals. I suspect that we'll probably want to try and take a look at walk score and see if we want to try and get to a certain point in different neighborhoods, but I think that gets down into the finer grain. That it wouldn't be part of the scope. That will be part of the process. Although I have some issues with how they do their scoring because it doesn't necessarily tell you whether there's a sidewalk. It just tells you how close something is. And so there are some issues. I know that those are things that they are working on, but those walk score is something that people look at particularly when house hunting. And for Urbana, I think having high walk scores helps us sell the community as a good place for people to live. So it's sort of a Chamber of Commerce thing for us to do.
Right, that's what I was going to say, is this is very, very important. Realtors are very, very interested in this. When
Yep.
you're looking at buying houses, you look at your walk score. If you're interested in moving towards community, which is where a lot of people who are buying houses are very interested in trying to live in high walk score, high bike score communities. So yeah, the walk score is very important. And that was my question, so there is a place that certifies like gold, silver. Do they do that? Is that
I
not their
forget what
thing though yet?
I forget. Their levels may be set up on that. Yes, it is the same thing.
Excellent.
Yeah, they start with bronze. They modeled it after the league program.
Oh, that's excellent.
It's not nearly as big as the
Yeah.
Bicycle Friendly Communities program, but there are communities on here that I think we're a better place to walk in, and so I think we should be on there.
Yeah, and the walk score thing is a big deal to real estate
Mhm.
agents. They're all over it. So, yeah, and it increases their property values in Urbana.
Okay, great.
Yep.
Great. So the process has not started, so it's in its infancy, but funding is secured, and we're going to start moving on that here this fall.
Yay.
Okay?
Thank you. Does anyone have any other questions?
Yeah, I was just going to say thank you for getting this started. I think it'll be very important.
Yeah, I'm
So-
dancing a little jig. so-
Yeah, I'm excited over here.
I'm going to second
Yeah.
that. Thank you.
I wrote some
I'll
good
take the
thing-
thank you,
good
but
things in my notes with
it's
exclamation
beyond-
points.
it's beyond
Put
me.
little hearts next to your
Yeah.
name.
I'll take the thank you, but like I said, it's beyond me. I mean, it's a collection of people. Really, though, it starts with BPAC, to be honest with you. I mean, when the commission makes those recommendations, I guess I could say that staff listens, right?
Someone from staff was on BPAC, so.
Yeah, yeah.
All right, and then I also asked for an update on what's going on with the bicycle master plan.
Well, I'll turn it to Kevin here, but, we're still going through a few things.
Yeah, so I've been making edits as time permits. So we're well along with those, and we're looking to reconvene the steering committee in the next few weeks.
Okay.
And then I think we'd like to bring it back here in October, and share all those, just the edits with everybody, since you've all seen the huge plan. And then take it from there. But the goal is to, I think, have the 2016 Bicycle Master Plan be the 2016 Bicycle Master Plan. So we're going to get it done.
Ray,
Yeah.
any other questions?
Kevin, I did have one question. Both the pedestrian plan and the bicycle master plan, they get adopted as an element of the comprehensive plan? That's kind of technical.
Yeah, that's correct.
Okay.
Definitely the bike master plan. We haven't gone as far with the PED, but I would think it would.
Yeah, I think that would be the route. Well, we'd like to bring them to BPAC in October, but we'll be convening the steering committee probably in the next 3-4 weeks. And then we got to run it through them, and we'd be bringing it back here in October. So
Prior to
We-
going to the steering committee, though, we'll be meeting with Mr. Smythe
yes,
directly
Yeah.
to address his concerns.
Jeff's on the steering committee,
Jeff is on the steering committee? Yeah.
and I'm on the steering committee, and Lily will be there. There was someone from the university involved with that, too.
Yeah.
And then I also wanted to say that we at the Park District are very appreciative of it also. I think it's on. And like when we're applying for grants or when we're making a point for something, we don't just use our own bicycle plan, we also use yours. And two particular areas that we look at a lot are the Main Street Spur, as we look at the Kickapoo Rail Trail.
Yes.
And it's good to have that in both of our plans. And then also the Green Loop, which is something that will happen over many, many, many years, but a way of connecting all our parks and getting, people there and from one to the other. And then it sounds like the pedestrian plan will also be kind of another tool for that. So it's awesome how they all will work together,
So we need this approved so that you can apply for grants.
right?
Any other comments or questions? Okay. And then the last item on the agenda is the US 150/45, or University Avenue, IDOT Safety Improvement Status Update. Oh, good, I've been wondering about that.
So about a year or so ago, there was what they call a road safety audit, which is a collection of people from, say, different groups within the Department of Transportation. Even the state police is involved, and they actually walk the corridor and look and identify. And these are actually non-engineers that are looking and assessing, and they determined that that portion of University Avenue, particularly west of, say, Vine/Cunningham, all the way down past Carl, was there were some concerns. There are some things that need to be addressed. So I just want to give you an update on where it's at. This is from the IDOT project engineer. The design squad is in the early stages of phase one. Phase one, on what they mean, is basically the early preliminary studies. Phase two would be actual plans. Phase three is construction. So when you hear those terms, that's what it's talking about. So they're in the early stages of phase one. They're determining the preliminary sidewalk layout, establishing preliminary right-of-way needs, which means they have to buy some properties or sections for sidewalk. They're reviewing access management. That was a key component, meaning that there may be driveways that need to be closed that go to nothing. Those type of things. They're looking at coordinating signal improvements. There had been some talk, particularly at Broadway and University there, near Jimmy John's, that there needed to be some improvements there. They were talking actually crosswalks. There's crosswalks only just on the one side, the east side. So they're looking at that. They're looking at finishing up the initial study by the end of this year. That's what they're looking at. And then they're also going to proceed with phase two, the plan prep, while they're wrapping up the phase one. They believe that this could be that it's a 2018 HSIP project, which is a Highway Safety Improvement Program project. So basically, depending upon the hoops that they have to jump through, they're looking at a 2018 letting, somewhere in that year letting. So they would actually go out to bid. And now we haven't seen any detailed drawings. I imagine city staff will be involved. I don't, usually in the phase one process, there's a public meeting of some sort so that there can be some input.
That's what I was going to ask about.
And then, of course, they go through environmental reviews in phase one, too. So it says here that they anticipate several meetings with the city and possibly the stakeholders during the process. So that's kind of where everything's at this point. With that, I guess the good news is they're moving towards some action here. It'll be a little bit of time. I know we've been concerned with some of the signals near the Carl campus. There have been a few incidents there with pedestrians that we've been very concerned about.
We've had a number of pedestrian fatalities in that area.
Yeah. And then we have been very concerned with Broadway as well, and University, and just one crosswalk there as well. So.
Well, I had a couple of comments. One is that I would want to encourage them to have public input. I don't think in this community it's a good idea to wait too long to get public input. That people in our community have opinions and they like to share them. And one thing in their study, which was missing from when I was at City Council when they did their presentation, there was no discussion about slowing the traffic on University, and I think that we have some issues with speeding along there, and speed is the #1 factor in fatality rates, and so I thought that was something we ought to look at. And I don't know whether maybe they now will do that in the study phase, but in the initial part, that was not discussed as a factor in fatalities, which concerned me.
Okay. If that's the maybe collective comment from the commission, what I can do then is give that information to Bill Gray, have him write to the department, and say, we've, briefly discussed this at a commission meeting, and the commissioners would encourage them to have, public input, don't wait too long, and then, there is some concerns about slowing traffic down. You can still come to the public input process, but I think that by mentioning that, it just could be a highlighted reminder to them, if the commission would agree with those comments.
So we need to hear whether other people agree with that. I don't want to speak for everybody.
I know there is a sense among a lot of people that, yeah, they take public input when they're done,
Right.
And when it's too late to actually have any influence on it. And so it would be really neat to have it earlier.
Okay.
Are there going to be bike facilities on University Avenue? I mean, am I?
Not on the street, from what I can recall.
Okay.
There was talk, I think, of a wider sidewalk or a multi-use path, but not on the street.
Did anyone else want for them to take a look at speed as a factor? Okay.
Okay.
Yeah, Cynthia, I think they should look into speed.
Thank you for updating. I forgot to ask about that one, but I have been wondering where we were with that, because I happened to be at City Council when they did the presentation. I was very delighted that they were doing it.
Mhm.
Okay, because when we set out with the CATS group, the Campus Area Transportation Study, we had high fatality rate on our campus, and we have made an impact there. And now I would say that the majority of the fatalities have been occurring along roads like University. And I know my husband's in the math department, and they had a math grad student killed on trying to cross University. And we have now built a whole bunch, I don't know how many hundreds of student apartments, maybe thousands.
With
on
bike
the north
racks right in front.
Yeah, on the north side of University. So we're going to have more students crossing University. And we did a corridor plan some years ago. RPC got a grant. The grant had been scoped long enough ago that it didn't include looking at how we could improve pedestrian bicycle access, and so there was a limited amount we could do on that. But I did get included in that plan that in 5 years we would come back and take a look at it, because it did not have what we were going to need because the land use was changing. So this study will take us toward that process of looking at how do we improve safety for pedestrians and bicyclists. It won't be the whole way. It was only, I forget how far down the study went.
I think it just goes really to Lincoln.
Okay,
I'm not sure if it went
right.
farther to the west, and
Yeah.
then I know it goes down to 5 Points.
But the improvements that we do on that part are something that then might, because does IDOT own all of it, or does Champaign take over? I guess I don't know the ownership on that road
Well,
completely.
the state route turns south on Wright,
Okay.
and I think to
Yeah.
the west there isn't that. That's just
Champaign.
Champaign. Yeah,
Okay.
not IDOT. Yeah.
Okay. So Champaign has the flexibility to then sort of match that design down the road, although they have, at this point, they have a number of streetscape requirements for developments that occur in that area, which Urbana hasn't had the same overlay district that they've had. I forget the University District, but it only goes up to University in the south side. Okay, yeah.
But the RPC did a University corridor study like
Right.
7 or 8 years ago.
Yeah,
So
that's
that's where
what I
some
was
of
talking
those
about.
streetscape improvements have done. Some of the other more recent ones were just part of the development
Right.
proposals. So
You got them in there because of the proposals
Yeah.
that they put in, yeah.
Also, too, the campus bike plan also highlights a lot of that, too, as well, along University.
Isn't it-
campus access points.
And it's like, these are retail, it's like a retail corridor, so it's like right now, it's only a retail corridor for cars. So all those businesses don't get the people that are now living there and that are, so would be very helpful to the businesses if we could make it more easy for people to go grocery shopping or to get their ice cream.
Thank you very much for that. Is there any other new business? I guess we can't actually discuss much more new business. It's not on the agenda. Did anybody have any new business that they would like to request for the next meeting? Okay. Announcements, that's the next item on the agenda.
I have a couple.
Lily has one.
Kickapoo Fat Tire Fest is this weekend. It's a mountain bike race. It's over in Kickapoo. It should be really fun. There's also Light the Night. It's just a reminder again, September 22nd. And I'd also wanted to say that we chose a date at the university for the bicycle census, and that's October 12th. And we're always looking for volunteers to count bikes on campus.
Okay. There are a couple of other events I wanted to announce. We have See You Across the Prairie coming up, and someone help me remember the date.
August 27th.
Thank you, August 27th, because I didn't write it down. I have trouble remembering those numbers. There it is, August 27th, and you can register online. You can go to prairiecycleclub.org. This is a fundraising event, and part of the proceeds will be donated to the Bike Project to purchase lights for low-income cyclists and youth. So it's benefiting a lot of different people in the community. And you can choose routes anywhere from 15 miles to 100 miles. And there will also be at 10 a.m. a 7-mile family ride. So if you would like to take your kids and do a short, fun ride, they designed that specifically for families.
Well, and I'll be leading that, and I'm sort of open. I'm going to see who comes and what they want and have several options.
Cool. It's a flexible route based on participation. And the departure point is at Parasol Records here in Urbana on Griggs. It's just behind the school board building. And it includes a bagel breakfast and drawings for bicycle-related prizes. So sign up, and we do recommend that you wear helmets. The other event I wanted to make sure is on everyone's calendar is the Illinois Bike Summit. That is September 19th. It will be in Bloomington Normal this year, but it's not that far, and we can carpool. I think in the past there actually been some people who biked over who have time to do that. That's a great way to do it. Yes.
You had the bike rodeo? Isn't the bike rodeo coming up?
Yes, we have. We are working on setting up a public section for a bike rodeo. We had a Cub Scout group ask for one for their Cub Scouts, so we're going to be doing that September 10th. It's at the Foursquare Church parking lot, which is on Washington by Dr. Williams. And I haven't got the time established. I think the Cub Scouts will probably go first, and then we'll have the public portion, but I don't have that completely nailed down yet. So that will be coming up. And then there was another, we've got Walk and Roll to School Day, October 5th. And that will be a fun event that most of our schools participate in, particularly K through 8, so our elementary and middle schools do that. Any other events we should announce here tonight? Go ahead.
I just would like to introduce one of my staff members. This is Jake McCoy. He's a civil engineer in our engineering division. Jake's going to be learning the BPAC ropes. The plan would be probably a year from now that he would likely replace me on BPAC. So I want him to come to meetings and meet you folks. And Jake handles most of our major, he designed Broadway Avenue up there with the Park District with the meandering
great.
side path. So when you drive through there or ride on that, he's the guy that did all the design. He worked with Kara's group hand in hand. And he's getting ready. He's got some resurfacing out to bid.
Cool.
right now that we're going to be doing here this fall on a few select streets, but you'll see his face. So
Welcome, Jake.
We were only pretending to be nice tonight.
I promise we'll be nice. One other, a quick item I will share with all of you. MTD purchased a lot to the west of their administration, to the east of their administration building on University to stripe for bus operator training, and they'll also be offering training then for city large vehicle operators and perhaps Parkland training. And since they were going to be paving and striping that area, I asked if we could put in a permanent installation for doing bike skills stations. And so that is in the plans. And there will be a small building there with a classroom and storage space for all of the stuff. Right now, Safe Routes to School has bicycles and helmets and things stored in the basement at Public Health because we don't have space for them. So it'll be really nice. We can put our trailer down there and store lots of our equipment and have a classroom. And so that's a really exciting project for us. It's in terms of being able to bicycle there. It's not the friendliest location to bicycle to. Down University, maybe one of these days we can get IDOT to take a look at refitting that road a little bit to make it friendlier, but it nevertheless will give us an opportunity to have that installation there when we do trainings, and I'm pretty excited about that. So yay for MTD. Does anybody else have any other announcements?
Yeah, that's all I was going to ask, is if the park district would ever put in like a permanent bike rodeo. So if kids went to the park with their bikes, they would do like little bike rodeo. I have no idea if
We had
this is
talked
even a
about it.
thing. I have no idea if this is even a thing. I'm just.
And I'm not too familiar with what's happening in Champaign, but they're starting to put something in, or there's plans for it. And although it could be a shared facility between the two park districts, we have the transportation issue of how do we get there. So I'd be interested to hear more about what you're doing. And it's right across the street from Ambucks Park, so.
Right, yeah, the, what's been discussed here locally has been a safety town, which is a more ambitious project than striping the skill stations on a parking lot. We could talk with the park district further about whether there's a location where we could actually stripe just the skill stations on, and that may be something that we can do. This summer when we did the camps, they did let us use the spray-on chalk instead of having to use the sidewalk chalk, so it lasted longer that way. But if we're going to do those trainings very often with the camps in the summer, there might be someplace at Crystal Lake that we could stripe it on. But the safety town's a more ambitious community-wide project. But one of the concerns I have too is that getting kids from schools there is going to be a cost issue a lot of the time, because they may or may not be able to get there by MTD bus depending on where it's located. And so then they're talking about paying extra for school bus transportation, which is a rather expensive undertaking. So I think those are all still part of the discussion. And
Even if like a safety town couldn't be made, at least it could begin to reserve space in a park for such an activity. You know, like how there's tennis courts, people don't really play tennis so much anymore. But like there could be, you know, it could begin, because people then, once you build it, people are like, oh, wow, wouldn't this be cool to have a little like houses here and then you could get grants and it could like, so at least just reserving the space in a more public space, because the MTD, that's like that seems like a very private space. It's not like I'm really excited that it's happening. Don't get me wrong.
Yeah,
but
no, it will be
I'm just,
fenced, and you only have access to it when one of the staff members is there. It will not be open to the public. Yeah, that's correct. So, okay, then if there are no more announcements, we just had this item on here about future topics, and we didn't have any that popped right up.
I just have a question for Lily.
Yeah.
There's no parking at the Arboretum whatsoever for a
I
bike.
know.
Okay, just I just wanted to lay that out there.
And actually, yeah. No, trust me, I know. There are plans for parking at the Arboretum, and then we had problems with funding. They did not secure the funding that they had thought that they were going to secure for it, and it unfortunately got cut. But they're still looking into ways to do that. Right now, just a little ways down the road at the Idea Garden, they're going to be expanding out that lot, and they will be adding parking to that lot. So
Bike
that's
parking.
Bike parking. Yeah,
Good.
yeah.
Because I went there for the garden walk with my bike, and I'm like, and I put it where?
It's a huge problem. They're excited to have some bike parking too to attract more master gardeners as well. But they know that that's a pretty big problem, and they're working to address it. It's just been a funding issue in the past.
All right. Well, I think that we're on to adjournment then. Do I have a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
In a second.
A second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you all very much for being here tonight, and we'll see you next month.